Hello all, welcome to the online presentation of event handling in Java. We all know that Java is a programming language that supports graphical user interface or GUI. So there will be components like text boxes, command buttons or push buttons, scroll bars and other GUI controls in Java programming, and we need a mechanism to handle what happens when you click on a push button or when you drag the scroll bar or when you type something in a text area, and these things are actually made possible by a mechanism called events in Java. In daily life we see a lot of events. Normally somebody hosts an event and then announces about the events to people who are actually waiting for that event to occur, and later those who have been actively waiting for that event will respond accordingly, like somebody may attend the event, somebody may boycott the event, somebody may sell something for the event, somebody may participate in that event. That is how events in our normal life work. This is another example of event handling mechanism. We have an event called exam, and there are students and there is an instructor. The students are writing the exam and the invigilator or the instructor is monitoring the exam. These two people, students and invigilator, they have been waiting for that event to occur and they have been notified about that event, and both of them are participating in the event, but they are participating in two different ways. The students are writing the exam and the invigilator is monitoring the exam. These are two different people who have been waiting for that event and who have been participating in the event. They are called event listeners. The name is obvious. Both of them have been listening for that event or waiting for that event, and they have been notified about the event. In programming, an event can occur from many sources, or an event can be caused in many ways. In normal scenario, an event can occur from two different components. The first is keyboard and second is mouse. There are other ways in which an event can occur also. An example is in a GUI program. You have a command button and you press your mouse pointer on that button, an event is triggered, and the triggered event is actually mouse pressed, and the source of event is that command button. Similarly, you have a text area where you type something and the event actually has been triggered is key pressed, and the event has been generated in, or the event source is that text area. About event listeners, we have already seen what an event listener is. An event listener is someone who has been actively waiting for an event to occur and who has taken some action corresponding to that event. This is a very simple calculator. Here we have two text boxes. Both of them contain two numbers, and there is a push button or there is a command button or there is an action button called add. On pressing that add button, there is actually an action taken place, and the action will add the two numbers which are represented in these two text boxes and then show the result in a label. Here there is a class which is responsible for doing this operation, and this class has been waiting for that event to occur, and this class is what we call an event listener. So we have an event source, we have an event, and we have an event listener. Delegation event model. This is the one that Java uses to handle events. We have an event source, we have an event, and we have an event listener, and once the event source causes an event, the responsibility of handling that event will be delegated to the event listener. And for this particular thing to occur, or for this thing to happen, the event source has to keep a register of all the event listeners who have been waiting for the event to occur. And once the event source causes the event, it will notify all the active event listeners. Now the event listener has got the notification from event source, then it can take the corresponding action. This is another representation of delegation event model. We have a source, we have an event, and we have a listener. In the previous example, the previous example of the calculator, the event source was the command button add, then the event was the mouse pressed, and the listener was the class that was responsible for handling the mouse pressed event. The class would call the appropriate method, which is what we call the handler, and the method will receive or read the numbers from the two text boxes and I convert them into integers and add them and display the result in a label. Here we have some examples of events. We have action event, we have adjustment event, we have text event. The action event corresponds to clicking an action button or a command button. The adjustment event corresponds to moving the scroll bars in a layout, and we have a text event which occurs when we change the text in a text box or text area. This is not a comprehensive list of events. We have a bigger list of events here. We here show the events, their sources and listeners. For example, the action event actually happens on clicking the mouse button. So the source will be the mouse button. The source will not really the mouse button, but an action button, a list, a menu item, a text field, and the corresponding listener class will be action listener. Similarly, we have component event, focus event, item event, key event, text event, window event, mouse event, etc. How Java handles these events? We have already seen the delegation event model, but practically how Java can handle events. That is what we are going to see now. Whenever we design an event-based program, we have to first identify the possible events that are to be handled. For example, in the previous case of a simple calculator that can add two numbers, the only event that we are going to handle will be the mouse pressed event or the mouse clicked event. And so first of all, we identify the possible events that are to be handled. Now we need to make a class that is responsible for handling these events. And how we can make it responsible for handling the events? What we do is we implement the corresponding action listeners. That is, we override the methods in the interface. In the previous case, we have the event, that is what we call action event, and the corresponding listener class will be action listener. Here we need to implement the methods of action listener class, and that is how we make event handling possible in our programming. We have a practical example of event handling. Design an applet that will handle mouse events. So the question is to make an applet, and the applet should be capable of handling all the mouse events. We all know that applet is a code which is running in the client side, and applet doesn't have any kind of standalone existence. We need a browser or a separate program called applet viewer to run an applet, and the concept of applets has been disabled from Java 11 onwards. So I am using a previous version of Java, that is Java 8, to run a demo program on applets. So our applet should be capable of handling mouse events, and using mouse we have two types of events that can be generated. The first is the symbol mouse event, like a mouse clicking and all those things, and the second is mouse motion event, which is caused by moving the mouse around. How we tackle this problem? First of all, we need to create an applet, and how do we create an applet? That is public class mouse events that extends applet. So if we extend a class from the applet class, automatically this becomes an applet, and applet has a special method called init, and applet doesn't have a main method at all. All these things we already know. Then we implement the action listeners. We know that we are going to handle two different type of events. The first is a mouse event and second is mouse motion event. So we need to have two different handlers for that. The first handler is mouse listener and the second handler is mouse motion listener. So our class will implement both these listeners. So the entire signature of the class will be public class mouse events extends applet implements mouse listener, mouse motion listener. And how do we implement mouse listener and mouse motion listener? We will override the methods in mouse listener and mouse motion listener. If we look at the program, this is the one that will do the above purpose. The name of the program is mouseevents.java. It demonstrates the mouse event handlers. To handle events, we need to import two packages, java.awt and java.awt.event, and to make this class an applet, we need to import java.applet. This piece of code will make applet viewer identify that this is an applet. We have these two tags, applet and /applet. The code or the name of the class is mouse events. The width of the applet is 800 and height is 600. We know that 800 and 600, these are represented in pixels. Now we are trying to make the class, that is public class mouse events. This has to be an applet, so we extend it from applet, and this has to implement two different listeners. The first is mouse listener and second is mouse motion listener. So this one implements mouse listener and mouse motion listener. When we implement an interface, this mouse listener and mouse motion listener, these are all interfaces. When we implement an interface, we need to override all the methods in that particular interface. So we need to override the methods inside mouse listener and mouse motion listener. Again, in our class we are using a string called a message. This message, the variable msg will store the message to be displayed on each event. So we are going to handle a lot of events like a mouse clicked, mouse left button down, mouse button released, we are actually dragging the mouse. All these are events that we are going to handle now, and to show that we are handling these events, we are using a variable called msg. This msg is responsible for showing a message on the applet window. Then we are using two integers, mouse x and mouse y. These will store the xy coordinates of the present position of mouse. We know that our coordinate system zeros, we are in the xy plane, and our 0 0 is the left top, and as we move right, the x coordinate increases. As we move down, the y coordinate increases. Then we have an init function, as in the case of every applet, and we are performing all the initializations here. And the initialization that we need to have in this particular case is we have to register our class to the mouse events. So we have a mouse events and we have mouse motion events. So we have corresponding handlers like a mouse listener and mouse motion listener. So we are registering our class for handling these listeners. So here we are doing the registration by these two lines of code: add mouse listener. So we are telling the Java system that this class is we are telling the Java system that this class is responsible for handling all the mouse events, and again the same class is responsible for handling all the mouse motion events. Then we have a special method called paint. We know that this is the one that will be automatically invoked whenever there is a refresh on the window, whenever our window is refreshed. So we have public void paint graphics g. G is an object of graphics, and g dot toString msg comma mousex comma mousey. That means in the coordinate position mousex comma mousey, we will be showing a message which is contained inside the variable msg. Now we will be handling the various methods in the interfaces mouse listener and mouse motion listener. So we have a number of methods in both these listener interfaces rather. The first one that we are going to handle is Mouseclicked. This method is invoked automatically when we press the mouse button. When we press the mouse button, then we release that. Whenever we click on the window, automatically this method is invoked. So here what we are trying to show is we are trying to show a message called Mouseclicked. Automatically whatever we store inside message will be displayed if there is a refresh or if there is a repaint. That is why we are explicitly calling this repaint. And at what location we have to show this message? We are showing this message at a coordinate location 0,400. 0,400. 600 is the total. What is the 600 is the total height of the applet. Yeah, height is 600. Then 400 will be at a location which is at the lower half. So the message Mouseclicked will be shown in the bottom half of the applet window, and we explicitly call repaint to make sure that this method is automatically invoked. The method that is automatically invoked is paint, and once paint is invoked, it will show the string which is contained inside msg at a location mousex comma mousey. So here it will show the message Mouseclicked at a location 0,400. Now we have another method, that is MouseEnded. MouseEnded, this event is triggered when we move the mouse pointer into our applet window. Again we will be showing the message MouseEnded at a location 0,400. Similarly, we have the event MouseExited, that happens when we move the mouse pointer away from our applet window. Again we will be showing the message MouseExited. Then we have MousePressed. This event occurs when you press the left button of your mouse. So here what we are showing is the message down, and then we call the repaint, and here we are not showing it at 0,400 coordinate location, but we are showing it at a position where exactly the mouse pointer is now. So we get the x coordinate of the present location of mouse pointer using getX function, and the y coordinate we get using getY function. Then we have the mouse released. This is just the opposite of mouse pressed. When we release the mouse button, we have the up message which is shown at the present location of mouse pointer. Then we have mouse dragged. Mouse dragged is when you click and then when you press the left button and then you move the mouse, automatically the mouse dragged event is triggered. Here we are actually showing the message dragging mouse in the status bar. Status bar is a small horizontal bar at the bottommost position of the applet. So there we will be showing dragging mouse, and at the exact location of the mouse pointer we will be showing a star. Why we are showing so? As we move the mouse, we will be continuously getting the x and y coordinates of mouse, and we will be showing the star. So where exactly the mouse pointer is now, there we will be showing a star, and the status bar we will be showing a message called dragging mouse, and we are calling repaint. And the even mouse the method mouse moved, this is triggered when we simply move the mouse around without clicking. So here again the status bar we are showing moving mouse. So this is the program that generates all the this is the program that handles all the mouse events as well as mouse motion events. Let's compile and execute this program. So to compile this one, we have javac, and the name of the Java file is mouseevents.java. It is not actually, yeah, so I need to go to the folder where this particular file resides. Now I am typing that. So the Java file is compiled successfully. Now to execute that, I am calling applet viewer. See, this is the applet. In the status bar you can see that applet started, and I am slowly running the mouse pointer into the applet. Yeah, now you can see at a location 0,400 there is a message MouseEnded. If I move this mouse out of this applet window, the message turns to mouse exited. Now I am simply clicking on the applet window. You can see the message Mouseclicked, and when I press the left button, you can see at the position of the present mouse pointer the message down. When I release the button, you can see the message up. But what actually happens is, when you release the button, there are actually two events. The first is the mouse button the first event is the mouse button released, and the second is the click event. So these two messages will appear there, but the click event is the one which happens later. So I am releasing the button. So momentarily there had been a message up, but as the latest event is mouse clicked, the message that we see is mouse clicked. Now I am simply dragging the mouse. I am clicking here and I am simply moving it. You can see in the status bar there is a message dragging mouse, and along with the pointer there is a star which is moving along with this thing. Now if I release the mouse button, there is no click at all. The click happens when you press the mouse button and release the mouse button at the same point without moving the mouse pointer. And now if I release the mouse button, there is no click at all, and as a result you can see the message up. And if I simply move the mouse around without clicking, you can see moving mouse, that message in the status bar. So I am closing this applet. Now I am coming back to the presentation. Now instead I am coming back to the program. This was the program, and suppose I didn't want to handle all these mouse events in my program. For example, I didn't want to handle this mouse released. I didn't want to show any message, or I didn't want to take an action when the mouse button is released. For that purpose, I am just hiding this. I am just commenting these lines of code. So if I compile now, what really happens? So when I compile, so there is an error message, that is mouse events is not abstract and does not override abstract method mouse released in mouse listener class or in mouse listener interface. So why this message appears is we are trying to implement this mouse listener and mouse motion listener. These are two interfaces, mouse listener and mouse motion listener. These are two interfaces. So we need to override all the methods in the interface. So this actually makes our programming a little bit cumbersome, because in order to handle one or two events, we have to override all the methods in that particular listener interface. And so this is the drawback of the event handling mechanism that we have just seen. That is, we had to override all the methods in event handlers even if we don't want to have an action corresponding to that event, and this makes coding very cumbersome. And how Java provides a mechanism to overcome this drawback, that we will see in coming classes. Okay, that is all for today. Thank you.